Good evening. Welcome to the April meeting of the York County Zoning Board of Appeals. Next slide. Okay, the way we'll run the meeting this evening is the first item will be to adopt the minutes from the last meeting. After that's done, if there's any old business, which tonight we do not have, we would do that. And then we will move on to new business. Each case will be, we'll go in this order. We'll have a staff will come up giving their presentation, and the applicant will be allowed to come up and give their presentation. After that, we open it up to a public hearing. If there's anybody here for or against, they may speak at that time. The applicant can come back up and speak again if they would like to add more information after public has had a chance to speak. Once that's done, we close the public hearing, and the meeting's now moves to the board, and there will be a motion to accept, deny, or defer, then a discussion and a vote. When you come to the lectern to speak, please start out with your name, address, and speak into microphone because this is being recorded. So, has everyone read the minutes, and does anybody have any comments?
I move to approve.
Second. Okay. Everybody raise your right hand to approve it. Minutes have been approved. Okay, there's no old business, so moving on to new business. First case, Z22-4V.
Here we go. It's going to be a little bit glitchy tonight, looks like. All right, case number Z22-7. This application is from Richard Smith and Stacy Hopkins at 82 Heritage Drive. Despite the name Heritage Drive, it's in River Hills, not Fort Mill. The zoning there is RSF 40, as is much of that neighborhood, and they're requesting a variance from the required rear setback for residential swimming pools. That's a new section there. In the new code, we have reduced this required rear setback from 15 feet to 10 feet. They are requesting a 5-foot variance to put the full 5 feet from the back property line. Here is the vicinity map. You can see it backs up to the 16th Greenway there. And off to the right, a little above, is the community center with the pool and other amenities for that neighborhood. That is the marina just to the south. Now the zoning map here, as you can see, it's River Hills. It's predominantly RSF 40. They do have a little RMX 10 there on the corner. And here it is. The proposed pool is in blue on the rear of the home there. I marked in red the required setback of 10 feet to show you how far it is. It's halfway past that toward the rear property line, toward the fairway. And this is the digital rendering that was provided by the applicant of the pool. You can see there's a little fence along the edge against the fairway, little patio area off to the right. And we had the drones, Keith, one of our code enforcement officers, went out and took pictures for me. I always give him credit, he does a great job. This is the rear of the home, showing the area where the pool would be. The grassy area there is the fairway. Keep in mind, River Hills has that 30-foot easement against all the back property lines of maintenance for the actual golf course itself. They did get a waiver from the golf course. It was actually from the Golf Pro. I did get a phone call from the golf course maintenance folks wondering what was going on. He did not discuss to the Golf Pro. Or the Golf Pro didn't tell them, but once they understood what was going on, they didn't have any other questions. I had one other question from somebody else who just wanted to know what the sign was about. All right, and here you can see the fairway with the back of the house. The tee for the 16th fairway is just off to the left here. The fairway curves after the house, kind of toward where John Gast is sitting, if you want to have a visual on that from this picture. All right, we'll go through the criteria here. Extraordinary and exceptional conditions. There were pictures in the packet that were provided by the applicant of the lot is very hilly. So it has a non-standard orientation on the home has a non-standard orientation on the lot because of the hills there. Again, it's River Hills subdivision. It makes for an excellent golf course for a hilly area. But that is why the home is probably turned the way it is, despite the neighbors are straight. Let's see, the existing patio on the southeast side of the home does exceed the required setbacks, and the full footprint of the proposed pool would fit in that area outside of setbacks. So there is room on the lot if they place the pool in that area. While the lot is sloped and the buildable area is somewhat limited by that slope, the nearby properties also have the same slope and are developed with single-family homes. So the staff finds that the proposed variance does not meet this criteria. And with B, since A did not meet criteria, B also does not meet criteria. And then with C, the staff finds that it does not meet the criteria of application of the chapter to this particular property, would cause, prohibit or unreasonably restrict the use of the property. Again, it does have room in that patio area to put a pool if they so desired, and it would stay outside setbacks. And then D, authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good. We did say that did not meet criteria. That pool is directly in the approach from the tee for the 16th fairway. It would be a pretty dangerous place to put a pool. I looked around the neighborhood to see if there were any other pools on the fairway. There were a few, but all of them were in an area that were either well set back from the fairway or behind trees or other obstruction or next to the house. So this would be one of the few that would be right up on the fairway, and the only one I could see that would not be screened by either the shape of the fairway or trees and that kind of thing. So since, this thing is being mean to me, since staff finds that the variance request doesn't meet all 4 criteria, we do have to recommend denial. Do we have any questions for staff?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you go back to the picture, the drone picture that shows the fairway in the back of the house? Okay. So can you point out where the edge of the pool or the edge of the fencing would be on this picture? Just to give us a little.
It would be, their property line runs approximately through here.
Okay.
So the pool would be pretty much where this tree is and these shrubs.
Gotcha. And just to clarify on the phone call, you said the pro was contacted. He was okay with it, but he was initially not in communication with the maintenance guy, and the maintenance guy does not have an issue with it?
They were concerned. They thought it was an unusual place to put a pool, but they don't really have the authority to say one way or the other.
Okay.
But if you'll notice in the letter that the golf pro provided, he did mention that it was in the approach and he was concerned about the proximity to the tee.
Okay, did we get that letter? Because I don't see a letter from the golf pro.
It should be in the packet with the HOA letter.
No, there was nothing.
Oh my goodness.
Did you see anything? No, there was no HOA or no letter from anybody.
The HOA did approve the requested setback. The golf course, the golf pro himself wrote a letter saying that he does not have a problem with the variance, but he found it a bit problematic how close the house was to the tee.
Okay, so you're saying the tee is like in the forefront of this picture? The
tee is actually in the back of the picture.
Okay.
And I can show, it's basically right back in here.
Oh, that's the greens this way?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, and it's a very narrow course, so, okay.
Yeah.
Played it.
And in terms of that letter, if it is left out, that would have been my fault. I put the packet together.
Oh,
So I'm really sorry. I didn't want you to think Marion did that.
Oh, no. Thank you for clarifying that.
So in the packet, under public feedback, you say there was an email and the writer expressed concern about fencing requirements. Is that
Yes, that was
county
one
or
of the,
HOA? What were they speaking of?
they were a neighbor, and they just wondered, the conversation basically went from what are they doing and to is fencing required? And we, as the county, don't regulate fencing, so we don't have a permit to issue. And we usually rely on homeowners insurance to ensure that there's fencing around a pool.
Is there a state requirement for fencing around a pool?
It's a homeowner's insurance.
But we could always make that a condition,
You
right?
could, yes.
Correct.
But there's not a state.
I mean, if you'd like to know, I think that we discussed it, like during recode at some point, adding fences in. But the general consensus was they didn't want to start regulating that sort of thing. So anyway.
And I know there are state regulations that address public pools. I'm not aware of any that would address pool at a private residence.
Okay. Good question.
I believe that you said that there's room for a pool somewhere else. Oh,
Yes, sir. Let
there's
me
room
get-
for a pool somewhere else on the property?
Yes, sir. I'll mark it right here. There is a patio in the corner of the property.
Okay, okay.
Do you have any further questions for staff? And- Okay.
Yeah. Would the applicant like to come forward, please? Yeah, you may come forward, please.
I'm Richard Smith, 82 Heritage Drive in River Hills. Sorry, I'm a little bit discombobulated. I actually got these days mixed up. I thought this was next week. So I flew in this morning or this afternoon about 4 from Florida. So forgive me if I seem a little bit out. First, I just want to say thank you for listening to me, and thank you for the staff for putting your presentation together. Obviously, since I'm here, I'm non-concurring with the assessment. Obviously, you guys would assume that. I would like to go through a couple of the things that were pointed out, and thank you for the drone. I wish I'd have thought of that. Just for clarity on this is just a graphical representation. None of the trees that are actually on the property are shown in this, just so that you're aware. That's why I provided the photos. Didn't want there to be any concern there. And again, there we go. And just so everybody is clear, this area here is not the fairway. This area is a hill that goes down from here. Oops, I'm shaking a little bit. Down and then flattens out. This is actually the fairway over here, and the tee box is over in this area. So I did have a meeting with both the pro and the general manager of the golf course, and we did talk through some of the concerns that they had about balls, errant balls, and really I think that's something that you really have to understand when you buy a golf course house, that you're probably going to have some errant golf balls going back and forth. And though there was voiced a little bit of concern, it wasn't to the point where we thought that it would be dangerous since we moved forward with that. I do want to talk a little bit about number A. Let me, if I can pull out my notes here. Sorry. I'm usually a little bit more organized. I'm an engineer, so I like to be very methodical in how I do things. Back to the patio, if we could. One of the things that I guess one of the non-concurrences with the staff and where we had placed the pool was really that we could have placed it in this area, and I think we have the same concern there with the offset from the house, trying to make sure we don't mess with the foundations, trying to really not interfere over here with this homeowner whose house really is right here. And then right in this area right here, we have a large stand of trees, which you can see, I believe, from the, well, not really from this one, it's not a very good photo. There's a lot of mature trees there, so we're trying not to clear cut the site. I mean, why would we do that when we can place it right here? And really, before we had started this, the setback was 15 feet. So I asked for 5 instead of 10. So thank you for amending that. So really, everything is one of the, and I guess I misunderstood the staff's concern when I read the patio. I thought that they were referring to the sunroom addition. So my mistake there because I had prepared a large diatribe about the plans. Because it's mentioned the 25-foot setback, and really the house was built back in 1978, and it remains unchanged. So I don't know what the setbacks were back then, but I understand that we're working from what they are now. But the house remains unchanged from the original footprint, with the exception of the garage, which was put in place in 2004. Again, all permitted. So I really don't agree with the non-concurrence. I think that there are concerns with placing it here. Again, with the footings of the house and then the other house that would be adjacent. I think that we would be more, one of the items is, I think it's C or D, where we're not interfering with other property owners. And so we really wanted to be considerate of the other property owners by not placing it over in this area, or really not even focusing on this area. Again, we started this when the setbacks were 15, and then we realized that we could place it there with a 5-foot setback, and then not clear cut the trees, which is, again, is a major consideration. Item B on of the staff's assessment really talks about how the other houses don't interfere, or they're in the same situation. I might be paraphrasing a little bit of us, and you don't have the benefit of a larger view. But most of the houses in the area are actually back further than ours because of the way that our front lawn, which is really a hill. So really, we're kind of stuck with where we're at. We go to item number 3, which is the southeast variance. Item number C, which would unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. I don't really have a lot to say there, really. I mean, we knew what we were buying when we bought the house. Everybody does that, right? So we just bought it last year. So we knew what we were getting into, though we probably didn't do enough due diligence in understanding what the setbacks were for the pool. We thought we had a little bit more room. But, we obviously want to make sure that we're not interfering with the other property owners as well. Item D really refers to substantial detriment and property and public good. Really, I struggle with this one because the does not meet criteria is really based off of a dangerous addition to the property, which really I think that's not for the county to decide whether or not the golf ball is a dangerous addition. But I think that's if I'm correct, item D, the only issue with substantial detriment is the proximity to the fairway, which again, I think that we have, through landscaping and other items, we've mitigated that issue. Let me see. So we covered item B. Are there any questions, really? I mean, and again, this is my first time coming up here, and so I'm a little bit,
So on the conceptual plan, the one that you said really is just a rendering.
Yeah.
Okay, you do have a fence
I do.
illustrated on here,
Well, we intend to put one, yes,
and
ma'am.
you do, okay, that was my second follow-up question.
Yeah.
So is that kind of where your property line is, or is that gonna be inside your property line?
That's-
I guess my
that's-
question is, you're talking about you're gonna put shrubs and coverage and stuff, but you don't have that, you have, 5 feet to your property line.
That's correct. I have 5 feet to my property line, and, which is, when you look here, my property line actually runs right up here. So it's in this gray,
Okay.
it's in the mulch area.
So
And the golf
within
course
that-
asks that we don't impede on the golf course so that they can
Sure.
maintain it.
Maintain.
And then we're gonna put the fence, and then we're gonna put ornamental stuff right on the other side of the fence, really just to keep everything clean.
Okay, so between the pool and your fence, that's all gonna be probably vegetation of some
It's
kind?
gonna be, yes, ma'am, it's gonna be landscaped. We've got,
Are you gonna have to build up a lot of dirt?
we will, we're gonna go up approximately 30 inches, I believe, 30 to 36 inches. We don't have it actually designed yet, because this is really the first step. I didn't want to hire a pool company to design something, because we need to get geotechnical borings, we need to do other things just to make sure that we build it correctly. But it will have a small, I won't even call it a retaining wall, it's more of a stem wall on that south side, and we intend to face it with the same granite that matches the house. So really, we're trying to maintain the integrity of the neighborhood as we do this.
So when you spoke with the HOA and the architectural, committee,
Yes, ma'am.
did they ask you how equipment is gonna get in there? Is it gonna come through the front yard, or is it gonna?
It's gonna come up through the front yard in real small equipment so that they can maneuver through the trees.
Okay,
So we will never impede on any other property or the golf course for that matter. It's gonna take a lot longer to dig the hole because they have to use much smaller equipment.
right, okay.
So you showed the pool 6 feet from the house.
Yes, sir.
Do you know how close you can get to the house before you undermine the structural integrity of the house?
Probably 4 feet, but it's on a pile not a pile foundation, but it's on a crawl space. So we've got probably 2.5 feet from the outside of the wall, but we also have the other concern that I have, and I did make an argument in my packet that we could go back another foot and cut a foot off of this, but my concern is safety, because these are doors, and I don't want to have enough egress for people to get around the pool, so that we're not causing an undue hazard. So right now, we're showing 5 feet off or 6 feet off of the house. We could probably go to 5 feet safely, 4 feet before we start talking about the foundation. But again, I think the 5 feet drive is driven by egress.
This 4 feet is a standard sidewalk width now.
It is, but these are also doors that you come out, and I'm trying to be very safety-minded with the people that are gonna use the pool, and mostly it's for my grandchildren. So I want to make sure that they can get by and get through there relatively safely. I mean, could we go to 4 feet? Probably, but we probably wouldn't feel as comfortable from the safety standpoint. As you walk down a 4-foot sidewalk, you often walk around people as you're walking side by side. So that was our
What size is the
consideration
pool?
there.
What size is the pool?
The pool is, on this end, it's about 7 feet wide. On this end, it's about 20 feet wide, because the irregular, shape
Yeah.
So we're about 20 foot here, about 7.5 foot here, and we just go the length of that, of the front face, which is about 38 feet. So, and we also talked about, well, could we cut this in half? And then we're really doing a lot for not a little bit, for not a lot of bang. And I understand that that's not a consideration of the board, but, you know, we also have to be mindful of what it's gonna look like at the end. And that was the same consideration that we had down here. I mean, we're gonna probably be pretty close to that setback on that other side as well. We did look over here, just so that there is, everybody understands that, but this is also a utility corridor. So we certainly didn't want to mess with utilities for both houses. There's transformers back there, cable, fiber, gas, all running up through this corridor here. So we didn't want to touch that. So we have talked to the HOA. They have tentatively approved it, pending your decision, and they've also tentatively approved it based off of our landscape plan. We have a landscape architect who's going to professionally do the entire area, again, to make sure that we have enough, everything done correctly, and we meet the intent of both the county with the canopies and the neighborhood with the look and feel of the neighborhood.
Thank you.
That's it. All right. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Do we have anyone to speak for or against the project? Seeing none,
I do have one question for staff. Do you remember when you were out on the property, you had mentioned that you suggested possibly moving it to that corner. Do you recall, are there any grand trees? Oh, because obviously the homeowner said there are trees over there. Are any of those grand trees that could not be removed?
Those are not grand trees.
Okay,
They are nice trees, but they are not grand tree size.
okay. Thank you.
okay. Public,
I'm sorry. They would just clear cut that entire area, so it becomes more of a canopy issue than a branch.
the public hearing's closed. Open up for a motion.
I make a motion to deny.
Do we have a second?
Did you second? Or did you say, do we
So
have?
do we have a second?
I will second.
Okay, we have a motion to deny and a second.
I'll make it quick, my reasoning. So, as everybody knows, we have the 4 criteria. While the topography is challenging, it's not extraordinary, it's not unique. I think there's a reason why they call it River Hills, as in it's pretty hilly around there. But the criteria that is just a hurdle that I don't think can be jumped is C. You have to make the conclusion that River Hills was built however many years ago, and now all of a sudden it's an unreasonable restriction not to have a swimming pool. And, it's just the way it is. Criteria says you have to determine that it's an unreasonable restriction. And I cannot make a determination that a swimming pool is an unreasonable restriction.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on what Jeff said. I just think this lot, it's understand why the house was, platted where it was. I just think it's one of those yards that's very challenging for, you know, a size of this pool. I think you also have the complexity of having the golf course behind. I mean, I know that's not the fairway, but balls are going everywhere. I mean, I can attest to it. And I do think there's a safety factor. And, you know, shrubs probably would help, you know, with the barrier, but I just think it's for a pool this size, it's just kind of not, it's just not a good fit. And going in 5 feet and then being right back up to that, you know, the greenway there, I don't think it meets the criteria as Jeff had stated. I think it's unfortunate. It's just one of those lots that it's tough to, unless you go downsize it, make a smaller pool, it's a lot for the size of a lot.
Anyone else like to make a comment? Further discussion?
Well, I'm new here, okay? I will say what I think. He obviously don't have anywhere else to put a pool. I mean, that patio area, that's not a good area, not big enough. I personally don't think that with that pool up 5 feet and the fence, they're still not into the bank. It goes down to the fairway. And I personally don't think it would hurt anything. I mean, but that's just me. That
Any
makes sense.
discussion? Seeing
I
none?
I would say that I don't think it makes a big difference between 5 foot or 10 foot from a safety standpoint. When they hit that big hook for a right-handed player, that 5 foot's not going to make much of a difference. So I understand the safety concerns, but I don't see a difference as far as safety is concerned between that location, moving it 5 feet in, or the other location, if either way there's going to be a pool there. I'd rather see the existing vegetation stay for sure for the neighbors' benefit on the other side there, leaving the pool where they show it. I would say that it is a bit of a unique circumstance. I mean, I think in general the setbacks are meant to be a setback from adjoining properties. I think you're in a bit of a different situation, and we run into this a lot. If there was another single-family residential home directly behind that house versus a golf course, I think that sort of drives it in one direction. With it being a golf course, I think that is or does make a difference and makes it not necessarily unique to other properties in River Hills, but it certainly makes it unique to other subdivision developments in the area. I think you could argue that a number of ways to try to make it meet that criteria. So with it being a golf course, I'm not sure it's as cut and dry as what's been previously indicated. So just my thoughts.
And I agree with you. On the safety factor, I mean, I'm probably a little bit above average, but I'm not, but you could place this pool on the roof and I'd probably put a ball in it at one point in time in my life, so,
I didn't see any holes in the patio doors in the back of that house either, which I could probably get one. I don't know how many yards it is from the tee to those windows, but
Yeah. And I do agree that it's unique from the standpoint that the land behind it is dedicated to a golf course. It's not a residence, it's not a, however, I believe from the aerial I looked at, there aren't other pools up and down the fairways. So from that standpoint,
So the hesitant,
there's two ways to look at that. There's nothing unique about this piece of property, meaning there aren't other people who are who can enjoy a pool along the fairway that this property can't because of the dimensions of the property. So that's one way to look at it. The other way is this also could set a precedent. Other people come back in and go, and we have pools all up and down the fairways. So that's kind of where I am. Further discussion?
I think Jeff said one time in here, we don't necessarily set precedent here.
we do not.
We do not set precedent.
True.
I think we should try to be consistent, but we don't set precedent.
True.
And I know that in
Every
the past,
situation's
we have
different.
granted some pool variances for certain circumstances.
Further discussion? Okay, so we have a motion to deny the variance for a rear yard variance of 5 feet. All those in favor to deny, raise your right hand. All those opposed, raise your right hand. Okay. So that one fails.
So you need a new motion.
Need a new motion.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a vote. Motion approved with a second. I'm assuming we don't need any further discussion.
I do not.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve the variance of 5 feet. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, raise your right hand. Motion passes.
Just real quick, did y'all want to add any conditions of approval?
I made the motion, not specifically. The fencing requirements, that all falls to the insurance provider. They require.
Thanks.
Shrubs, landscaping.
I'm not a landscape architect, so I have a hard time coming up with that. I think his intent is to landscape it well, and he's certainly gonna wanna protect his grandchildren from those worm burners, so. But if somebody else has a different thought.
No, I'm good. Okay. Next case, let me see if I can get the number right this time. Z22 -8B.
All right, case number Z 22-8. This is also a pool setback variance from 10 feet to 5 feet. The applicant is Beth Hanson. The location is at 1945 Faison Avenue, and this is in the Fort Mill area, zoning RSF 40. So here's the overview of it. Kind of top right there is Baxter Village. You can see Sutton Road is to the left, and I-77 is to the right. Here's the, I guess, defunct way station there to the right. There's a creek in the back with a open space for the community and an older subdivision next door. The zoning map here, you can tell it's pretty homogeneous zoning. It's RSF 40. The lot sizes are a little, yes,
Can
sir.
I stop you just a second? Should we have 2 votes for the last one?
Oh, sorry.
I just signed the one for the 4. We need one for the.
We need one for the denial, the first motion.
Oop.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. Didn't let you train.
Start again, or?
Yeah,
Okay,
let's start over, yeah.
all right. Let me get to my place anyway. I'm gonna scoot back. All right. It is another zoning request for a rear setback variance from 10 feet to 5 feet. The property is at 1945 Faison Avenue. The applicant is Beth Hanson, who lives there. It's zoned RSF 40, as is the neighborhood. Aerial here, you can see the property is the little yellow rectangle. To the top right is Baxter Village, along with I-77 along the right side, and the left side is Sutton Road. I've got Sutton Spring on the mind. You can see a creek to the rear of the property and the open space for the neighborhood, and an older neighborhood to the north. That's RSF 40 here. This was formed the neighborhood was created in 2007. You could get a lot size bonus for a smaller lot if you had utilities under the code then, so that's why the lots are not 40,000 square feet. Okay, and here's the proposed pool. This was in the applicant's packet. It's not precisely to scale, so a little forgiveness on the numbers on all this. I kind of added in the red 10-foot rear setback. That would be the standard setback, but the pool is outlined in blue. You can tell here the house is built to the front and rear setbacks. The property owners bought this lot in 2007 when the neighborhood was being developed, and then they built the home to suit. It was, you can tell in the deed record, there's 2 different entries for it. Go here, we had the aerials done again. And this is the rear yard. You can see the playground here for the kids. That back fence is the approximate rear property line. That's that little dark thing. Some of my coworkers say it looks like a silt fence, but it's one of those ornamental fences. You can also see the lot does slope. Right here on the driveway, there are a couple of retaining walls holding up the driveway and allowing for a flatter area in the back. Here we go. You can kind of see along the property line, it does slope off dramatically to the rear of the parcel here. That the open space there is fairly rugged. It goes right down into a creek. So the home itself is right at the top of the hill. And go through the approval criteria. Oh, I should mention, I got 2 phone calls for this one. One was just inquiring what it was. Another one was a property owner in the older subdivision to the north who was concerned about the stabilization of the hill and adding a pool to that area. I should mention that the neighborhood was graded out 15 years ago. That hill should be stabilized by this point. Let's see, go through the findings here. Extraordinary and exceptional conditions to the piece of property. The existing property is the same shape and size as the majority of the lots within the subdivision. The site is developable as evidenced by the home that was built by the homeowners in 2007. So we find that the criteria does not meet the extraordinary and exceptional conditions criteria. Again, with B, since A did not have any, did not meet the criteria, B also does not meet criteria. And C, the application of this chapter, a particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. The owners could construct a pool on the site outside of the required setback. While this pool may be smaller than the one proposed, the standard size pool could have easily been constructed had the house not been placed against a rear setback. Therefore, we find it does not meet the effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict criteria. And D, authorization of the variance will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent property or the public good. This lot does back up on the open space, and they're not up against the rear, the side setbacks, just the rear setback. So we do find it does meet this criteria since it's open space, and passive open space. There's no activities organized in the area. But since the variance does not meet all four criteria, we do have to recommend denial. Go back to this one. Do we have any questions for staff?
In the application, the applicant mentioned that there is a sewer easement that affects how they can utilize their property.
Yes, there is.
Does that sewer easement affect the neighbors, others in the neighborhood?
Yes, sir. It affects their direct next door neighbor to the right. Let me see if we can see it in our aerials here. This neighbor right here. So the sewer line easement crosses this property line and goes across the back of this one.
It's only impacting a couple of lots?
Yes, only a
Oh,
couple
that's
of
right.
lots.
What were the dimensions? Can you go back to the dimensions of the pool? It's pretty narrow currently, isn't it?
If I can get, there we go.
Or as proposed, fairly narrow?
I do not have the dimensions off the top of my head. This is a fairly standard pool size. It's not something I would consider extravagant.
It's 12 foot wide, maybe?
The applicant is here to be able to answer questions. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, you have the floor.
Would you like to come forward, please? Please.
Good evening, Beth Hansen, 1945 Faison Avenue in Fort Mill. And I'll start by saying thank you very much for all of your time. I appreciate it. I know it takes a lot to go through it and to talk to us and to talk to people and to be here, especially on the Thursday before Easter. So thank you so very much for taking your time. If I may, I don't know if it makes a difference. I had not provided pictures ahead of time. I do have them for everybody here. So would you like me to do that? May I pass them out?
Sure, please. Thank you.
Included in that pack as well are letters of support from both of my neighbors on either side of us. So before we even went down the road with this process, we did solicit the opinions of our immediate neighbors to see that it would bother them at all. They are not bothered by it in the least. Incidentally, our neighbor to the west of us is actually in the process of putting in a pool themselves. And the neighbor to the east of ours will also be the beneficiary in the event that you should grant this, will be the beneficiary of the dirt to help supplement their land where it kind of falls. You see a lot of those lots fall off pretty steeply. And so we were planning on sharing the dirt with them and giving that to them to recycle the dirt. So with respect to the challenges that were faced on the first couple things being not an extremely difficulty with respect to the land, that that lot is, those two lots are unique or in, with the right setback coming down across our property, and as had been mentioned, goes across into the other neighbor's yard, goes pretty much through their house, a little bit through their backyard. Our lot and the lots along that street are a little bit unique in the sense that they do not have people's property abutted right against the property. And so we thought that that may be something that would be particularly helpful. I know the purpose, as was mentioned earlier, the purpose of having the zoning standards really does go along providing safety and security with respect to the adjacent properties, as well as making sure that there's right of ways with respect to vehicular traffic and people's general property. The rear setback, we wouldn't be doing that, and there's actually a fairly large rear setback before you even go down the hill that is maintained property where this would not fall into there. We kept it as snug as we could to the house. From what we've been researching, it looks like you can go between 3.5 to 4 feet from the foundation of the house to be able to put it in there, and it is snugged up pretty closely there too. One of the things to keep in mind, I know that was mentioned that we could have built the house someplace different on the lot. As folks are probably familiar, it was a Ryan home subdivision, and we didn't get to choose where the house went on the lot. They said, pick your house, pick your lot, and we'll put it. And so that was pretty much how it went. That may be the general naivete of first-time home buyers, but that was just sort of the way that it was explained to us. As far as I'd mentioned, it bothering anybody, we aren't anywhere close to the setback to the folks on the east of us. To the folks on the right of us, the closest we would get would be about 10 foot 8 inches. So, and that would just be the very, very closest edge of the pool. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, and in addition, while I appreciate your comment, Mr. Gast, about the not setting precedent, one of the things that we did call in one of the photos that is included is three doors down from us across the street in a property that does abut someone else's backyard. There was granted a setback for a pool that is 5 foot, their entire backyard all cement up against, and they do directly abut somebody's property to the south of them. So that's what we were sort of looking at, saying, oh, well, okay, we're trying, and when we contacted those homeowners, they did say that they went through a rigorous discussion, similar to how you are conducting this evening, and we're happy to speak to that as well, just to see. I think that's probably about all that I had to mention. You can see, if you look at the photos, you can see where the yellow line is, which sort of bisects where the property, where the pool would be, where that little yellow piece goes. That's the outline of the edge of the pool. It goes up, if you're looking at the picture that's the closer up one of the green slide, it's directly to the right of the slide, and that's where the most northern edge of the pool would sit. The rest would all be grass, and then it would be fenced in. It is required, the fencing is required by our insurance company. And there's a very specific type of fencing to make sure that nobody can enter the property, so as a small child can't come across. We did discuss that actually with our neighbor to the west, and have agreed that in the event that it goes forward, that we would utilize that same fencing and update it to make sure that it was compliant from both sides so that no children could come across or step. There's a footer railing that you have to change now because the code has changed, and you have to make sure so that nobody can step on that little footer and go over the fence more easily. And so we've agreed to work with them to update that to make sure that it's safe for both parties on both sides. I would say that's probably most of what I have to say. We have support to do it. We would really appreciate being granted the ability to use the property in that way. We believe that the landscaping around it would allow it to be, to look as nice as it could and be it's not going to be a big cement slab. It'll be nicely landscaped. We have a landscape architect that's provided a plan that would go around it that will allow us to do that. As I mentioned, on both sides of the property are pretty full, I wouldn't know if you'd call them old growth, but pretty tall trees. Everyone that's been there, the exception of our neighbors to the west, have been there 7 years, I think, but our neighbors to the east and ourselves have been there 15 years, and so all of the trees that are on the sides of both properties are pretty old and tall. I would say you're looking probably at least 15-foot tall, full trees on either side for privacy for both property owners, to the extent that anything should ever change. That was a consideration that we had as well. But we will continue to keep the landscaping up around the edges as well. And it is only less than half of the backyard, so the rest of the backyard would still maintain greenery around there, and especially because we can't access because of that sewer that goes across the sewer easement. We didn't want to touch that. So you can see, according to the plan, that that dotted line that runs from the upper blue corner, that's the easement, and we want to make sure that we didn't go anywhere near into that and kept it open so that you can access it from the variety of ways around it. There is an access point to I'm sorry, I forget that I have this. This part of the property here that you go around that will allow the machinery to travel in this way and not bother our neighbors at all. This has been cut. We had some trees that were here previously, which we had taken down, so the machinery will be able to go in this way, straight from the street into here, and come back here and do their work. The homeowners association did approve it contingent upon your approval, and I respectfully request your approval. Does anyone have any questions?
So being that close to the sewer easement, you do not have, because you are actually outside the easement, you did not have to have any certain approval from DHEC or anybody, or?
Nope, not as we've just, we called over there and they said, no, as long as you're outside of the easement. Because
Okay.
they set in sufficient boundaries to make sure that it's protection area.
Okay, that's kind of what I figured. Just wanted to ask.
Who owns the property behind you?
Who owns the property behind me?
The vacant land?
In Wimbledon Woods.
The vacant land that's behind you?
Oh, the homeowners association owns all of that. It's a nature preserve. Yeah, it's not buildable. It's all deep. It's a deep ravine with a creek in the bottom, and it goes up the other side to the other
Okay, but
division.
it was dedicated by, or owned by the,
There are
Sutton-
signs around
Sutton
it that
Place.
says protected area.
but by your neighborhood?
Yes, yes, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone to speak for or against?
Do you need him to speak?
Doesn't have to. Just giving you the opportunity. Okay, I'm seeing none. The public hearing's closed, and open up for a motion.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion to approve the granting of the variance. Any conditions?
No conditions.
Discussion?
It's really, for me, it's a similar situation as to the last one, that it's unique in the fact that there is not another single-family residence behind it. So what are they set back, is that set back from? They're setting back from dedicated open space. That makes it unique. I don't see that as a necessary setback as it would be if it was a single-family home. So I think it makes it unique in that situation, like the other one being adjacent to a golf course. Hence the reason I think, I feel like if you look at it from that perspective, it does meet the criteria.
I agree.
Any other discussion?
I would say if we had two criteria, I would agree. I think this case is a little different. especially regarding the sewer easement. Really restricts where the pool could go. So I think you could, depending on your interpretation of extraordinary and exceptional, you could maybe make this one meet that, but there's just a home that has existed for 15 years, and 15 years later, you now have to make the determination that it's unreasonable that there's not a swimming pool there. Is impossible. It's just impossible. So if there were two criteria, I would agree to approve, but criteria number 3 is just impossible to get over.
Yeah, and I agree with Jeff. You know, it's just, you know, not all lot sizes are adequate enough to fit a large-size pool. And I know people's minds change and they, you know, they desire to have one, you know, later on in time, but I just think it's trying to put a square peg in a round hole, and it's just this size of pool, and there's a reason why they went with 10 feet, not 5 feet. And granted, this one is a little different because it's got the green space behind. I think it is a little different than the golf course because you won't have the foot traffic probably as much and people, you know, up behind your property as much, but I just do struggle with C. So hard for me to get around that. And again, you know, a pool is not a necessity, and I think there's a difference with that. It's a luxury. It's not something that every house, you know, it's not something that's required. So I just think I just struggle with that on number C.
Let me just add, I mean, the applicant wants a pool, and trust me, I want you to have a pool. But in order to be fair, when the law says you must apply and find that the application meets all 4 criteria, not just 3 or what, then in order to be fair to everyone, you have to apply the law the same. And I respect everybody's determination of how they interpret those 4 criteria. We all have different opinions. It's why there's so many of us up here. So it's just a different interpretation regarding what is an unreasonable restriction.
And excuse me, I'm typically the one who's with you on that, where setback's a setback, rules are the rules. But I also agree with John, this is backing up to a dedicated space for all purposes. And this is an on-grade structure. This could be pavers. If this was a deck or a garage or something like that, I would have a different thought process on this. But this is for the most part, an on-grade structure that's backing up to a dedicated space. So that's my thinking. Any other discussion? Okay, so we have a motion to approve, a second, no conditions. All in favor of the approval, raise your right hand. All opposed, raise your right hand. Motion passes 3-2. Thank you. We have no additional business tonight, so I have a motion to close out.
I move to adjourn.
Second?